All right, everyone, we are live, and this time, I think for the second time in the row, we did manage to have our intro before we actually get to the actual interview. Welcome to Contact Lost Podcast. If you are here, then probably that's by intention and not by mistake. So, welcome. This is your one-stop shop for competitive 40K content, both in Poland and abroad. We are now focusing very much on the abroad bit because we have just come back from the we have come back from the WTC from covering it, and now we are heading to the LGT London Grand Tournament. So another huge event, probably the biggest singles event on this side of the pond, possibly in the world. We will see how well Zach was able to advertise it and how well the ticket sales have gone. But before we get there in 2 weeks' time, we are doing a series of interviews called the LGT's Lucky 7. So I did explain it in previous episodes. Apologies to everyone who has heard it many times already, but any new listener deserves to know. So we are doing this series in which we basically the series revolves around the number 7 because it's the 7th edition of the tournament. So we are doing the various kinds of top sevens. I pitch an idea to my guests, potential guests, and then they pick something of their liking, and we discuss it. And we discussed LGT, and we discussed their 40K career, and that's what we are here to do today. So without further ado, let me introduce my guest. I don't know if you are familiar with him, but he is one of the Unconquerables. He is Mr. 10 to 1, which I will explain in a moment. He is Mr. I see a Wraith Knight, and I'll simply kill it with my demons, Mr. Will Whitaker. Hello, dude.
Hi there. Thanks for having me on.
Right. Was that introduction spot on, or did I invent something?
Yeah, I don't know. I think every time I've tried to kill a Wraith Knight, I've failed. So we'll see. But I did manage to win a couple of those games anyway. So,
So I've heard. Uh, did you get that 10 to 1 reference or not really?
no, I don't know what that refers to unless
Right.
it's odds for winning
So,
the Unconquerable.
the organizer of the LGT, so Zach, runs his own podcast, which is called, I think, What's New in 40K or something like that. And in one of the episodes, I mean, he's done a series of episodes leading to the LGT as well. And one of the things that he does that before like major events. He invites a friend, I think, who goes by the name of George, who is a professional bookie. And the thing that he does, George, I mean, is he tries to estimate the odds of how likely it is for someone to win an event. And when it came to you, he gave you the 10 to 1 odds. And now I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about that? Is that good? Is that bad? Is
That's
it?
pretty good. That's pretty good
Yeah,
because
that's pretty good.
that's
So,
for the smaller for the invitational tournament.
yes, that's
Yeah,
correct.
yeah. I mean, there's 24 people playing.
I think
Yeah, I think
25. Zach
25.
mentioned 25. Yeah, which is weird because it's an odd number, but still, I think that's the actual number. But I might
Right.
be mistaken.
Well, still 1 in 10 with 25. Yeah, I'll take those odds.
Yeah, so I think he mentioned that my son, so part of Contact Lost and part of Team Poland to the WTC, I think he was like 6 to 1, and then
Mm.
he said that probably Innis is most likely to win this or something like that. But still, 10 to 1 sounds very good. So
Yeah, I
where
mean,
is that
I'd
coming
never
from?
for
Uh
10 to
huh.
1. I would never, go for a 10 to 1 play within a game of 40k, of course. So I would never actually stake anything on a 10 to 1, but still.
You're too modest. So, where is that coming from? Where is that 10 to 1 coming from? Like, what do you think could have gone into George's head, and what is the reasoning behind such odds?
Well, I think that partly it's because my surname is Whitaker, and George absolutely loves my brother, and he thinks he's Daniel. Daniel played George a long time ago, and George has just been enamored ever since. And so I think that a lot of that affection for my brother has rubbed off on me. And
Right.
I did actually listen to this podcast, the 10-1 one. I couldn't remember my own odds, but George said a lot of the predictions were based on the results of the data slate, and everyone thought Eldar was going down. But in
Yeah.
fact, what actually happened was Thousand Sons went down. They went way down. So yeah, so I've had to definitely swap faction, and I think maybe that might affect those 10-1 odds if there
Yeah.
was a re.
I wanted to say, for a professional bookie, his estimation of what was going to happen with the data slate was pretty atrocious.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the nature of bookies, isn't it? They can't actually tell the future.
Yeah, the Eldar are going down, Custodes are going to be the new meta, and yeah, Thousand Sons are going to remain untouched. None of those were true. So
No.
okay, all right. So tell us a little bit about yourself. So how does one become the that's I always have problems with pronouncing this unconquerable. How does one become part of that group and gets
Well,
invited into the invitational?
7 of the 8 members in this Unconquerable little tournament all have gone 5-0 at one of Zach's events this year. And I think probably it's one of the recent ones, so maybe like Leeds or the London Open or things like this, since 10th has dropped, and they've all been invited along. And then Zach said there was this wild card slot that would just be done by popular demand. So I put my name forward for that, and loads of people, kind of got a snowball going, and a lot more people commented on that post than I ever anticipated, and a lot without, I didn't beg for all of those posts. So yeah.
So, do you think that that is partly on the back of your brother, that and again the surname, or is it because you're well known in the community and people just voted for you sincerely?
Yeah, I don't think that was because of Daniel. I think that was, I do. I'm not bad. I just haven't
Never
won a
meant that.
season
Yeah.
major.
All right. Okay. So tell us what do you play with? Like, I mean, I did mention Chaos Demons because
Yeah,
I heard that on one of the podcasts. I think it might have been George that mentioned it, or maybe
yeah,
Zach.
yeah.
Um,
They did.
and
They
now
did.
yeah, and you
So
already mentioned that you would have to switch to a different army. So, is Chaos your kind of thing, or yeah, tell
Chaos.
us all
Yeah,
about it.
Chaos is definitely what I feel most comfortable on Chaos, and my highest accolade in the 40k community is I won Best in Chaos a couple of years ago, and so yeah, since then I've just always wanted to stick with Chaos.
Okay.
But I do play Tau as well, so now I'm in this heart wrenching situation where my heart is telling me I should play Chaos because I've always played Chaos, but then Tau is sitting there just being just incredibly incredibly attractive right now, right? So do I follow my head and maybe take some easier games and go Tau, or do I think that I'm going to have more fun in my games and play what I kind of enjoy more and go Chaos? Because Chaos have always got this. They're always kind of the underdogs, and in the lore and often on the tabletop as well. So it felt a bit wrong for them to be at the top with like Thousand Suns, and even CSM right now are very strong, but that doesn't feel, that's not that thematic for Chaos. So I think it's almost right to play Chaos when they're a little bit, against the ropes.
Yep, that's exactly it. So I'm actually not surprised, and I yesterday when we were discussing like the potential armies that we will see at the LGT and potential armies that we will see at the Invitational, I suggested that Chaos Space Marines are in a fairly good spot right now, but that was again coming from the results of the Polish team championships that took place this last weekend, where Liam VSL, so one of the I think strongest players in the world, brought CSM and he brought home 100 points from his
Yeah,
5 games. So it's only testament to the fact that even though, as you said, usually CSM are the underdogs, right now they are quite powerful underdogs, definitely.
they are. Yeah,
So yeah,
I think that I'm more drawn towards demons though than Chaos Space Marines. If I were to play Chaos, it's this. Well, I've submitted my list for the Invitational, and it's a demon list. And then I think I'd probably play something similar for the main event, if not
okay.
Tau.
So I'm not going to ask you about your list specifically, just because I think that the lists haven't been released yet, or like made public. But I wanted to ask you about your impressions after the data slate and what happened to demons, because again, I think it was mentioned in Zach's podcast that nothing would happen to the demons, and then some horrible stuff happened to the demons. So how do you feel about it, and how much did it affect your list building?
Well, there was this moment in ninth edition, just after the Demon book came out, where all the big monsters got a nerf. And what happened was there was this resurgence of the small monsters because they tweaked it, right? So they brought down the big monsters and encouraged you to play small demons. And it worked really well. Everyone pivoted to small demons, or else I definitely did. Like, I'd only take Be'lakor and no other big demons, and it worked. It was a very, very strong list. Played the mission much better. You've got more tools to play with. And that same thing has now happened where they've made some of these smaller demons who were, I mean, outrageously costed before, like Bloodletters being 160 points. I mean, it was a joke. And now they're 140, and that's only 10 points more than they were pre-10th. And so, I mean, considering the premium that you pay for melee now, I think it's worth considering now, if definitely not an auto take. So I think that for demon lists, I've definitely pivoting towards smaller demons, and I think that's probably the way to go following this data slate.
So there is a thing that I can talk about because the guy decided to go public with his list. I am an avid podcast listener, and I listen to like everything. So there is this podcast that I strongly recommend you people in general listen to, which is the 6+++ podcast run by Tom Lohman. And he revealed his list. Like in the latest episode of his podcast, he said he is bringing Chaos Knights mixed with demons. And one of the demon part of the list will be a Great Unclean One. I think Nurglings for doing some missions, and the Burning Chariot. Now, is that something that you would consider as well?
Yeah, I understand what's going on there. So what the Burning Chariot does is it shoots something, and then that thing can no longer take cover saves. So this makes the low AP shooting on the armigers a lot more efficient. This is quite similar to an idea that I had for Thousand Suns, because Thousand Suns have a similar thing where they can turn off your armor saves, and suddenly armigers with their AP1 shooting, with against something that doesn't take armor saves, much more efficient. So it's a similar idea, but then with the benefit of not having to play current Thousand Suns.
Yeah, so it synergizes well with brigands, I guess, and I think Tom is bringing like, I don't know, 6, or I don't know if that's even like technically possible, but I know he is going to spam those, some carnivores and so on. Sounds like one hell of a list that he's definitely going to have fun with. Whether it's going to win the event, hard to tell, but it sounds like a fluffy and fun list. So looking forward to maybe facing that on the table.
Same.
Tell by the way, Will, I think there is a little bit of lag. So I don't know if you want to go with video or if we just want to go with audio.
We can go. Yeah, let's cut the video. That sounds good.
Okay, yeah. So let's do that. I can cut my video as well. We can just leave it to the sound. So, all right, let's do it like this. So, let's talk a little bit about the LGT itself. Which edition of LGT will that be for you?
I think it's my third. Yes, this will be LGT number 3.
Okay, all right. So, how have you done, or how successful were you in the previous ones? And
I
then,
think I've.
yeah, go on.
Sorry, yeah, I think I've gone 4-1 at the other 2 as well. But the first time I wasn't. I think it was 2019, maybe before COVID, maybe not though. I can't remember. But anyway, I was not quite as I didn't take the game as seriously back then, and I definitely wasn't as well practiced. So so that one I kind of got lucky. I was playing Chaos Demons at the time, and I managed to sneak through a 4-1 there. But and then last year it was a little bit of a kerfuffle because there was some misinformation or some error in communication where we thought it was random pairing. So it was absolutely like going for hundreds. It's just like a bit of a laugh, you can take some risks in your game and maybe get rewarded by a bigger score. But sadly, for us, we were misinformed, so it was not random. And that meant that having got 3 hundreds on day 1, so at the end of day 1, I was the top of the room. I had 300 points, hadn't dropped a point yet. Had the LGT been an RTT, then I would have been walking home with the trophy. But then next morning I paired into Mike Porter on his Harlequins.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so who was also on a very high score. But I mean, that's to be expected when scoring high. But one of the joys of LGT, one of its strengths, is that it's actually probably the best. If you're aiming for a 5-0, the LGT is probably the best tournament to achieve that on, because your chance of meeting these other sharks out there is far diluted at an event like this than it is
Hmm.
at some of the other events. So yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that's definitely my ambition for this one,
All
and
right.
that's something that I haven't done before. So
So what makes you want to come back to the LGT? Like, is there anything about the LGT that makes it stand out over? Because UKTC is such a well organized circuit that every event seems like the biggest event. Every event seems like a Shark Tank filled with talent, filled with people who, like the biggest names. Uh, how is the LGT different?
I mean, you just have to walk into that room once to know how different it is, and how it's just a totally different level. There's just an atmosphere in there as soon as you walk in, and it's fantastic. And I don't know, last year, having because it was my return visit, it almost felt like coming home in a lot of ways. Like you walk back in that room and it just felt, I'm back. Here we are again, and I'm looking forward to that feeling again this year. It's yeah, it's like it's almost like going to a festival, when you were younger and maybe you went to Leeds Fest every year or something. You'd just be like, oh, it's like it's an indescribable feeling. It's just an atmosphere when you walk in. It's great.
Yeah, I can attest to that. Last year was my first time to an event of that scale, and to be perfectly honest, at the beginning it was quite overwhelming. Like the noise of it all, like all the people playing, all the systems being played at the same time. But then something that absolutely left me in awe was like the sheer amount of celebrities, both like 40K celebrities, both playing and non-playing, that you can simply meet there. Like there was all the big names from the UK were there, including now yourself, but also I forget all the names. Rob from the Honest Wargamer was there. Duncan Rhodes, the Two Thin Coats was there. Even people from our podcast took some photos with him. So it's just an amazing experience altogether, and definitely a place you want to be at when it happens. So listen, we met here to actually talk about a certain top seven. Which top seven did you pick? Which topic do you want to talk to us about?
Yes, I chose the 7 most impactful units following this
Hmm.
data slate.
So, did you put them in any specific order, or is it completely at random and we just go one by one?
I have put them in order. I've put them in, yeah, I've ranked them from 1 to 7. It's a bit rough, I think that there's probably, it's by no means a comprehensive list, but I think you'll definitely see these ones out there if you attend the event, and you'll notice that they're doing a lot for the armies they're in.
Yeah, so essentially, this series is meant to be both fun and informative. And let's remember, it's your take. So you have the right to pick whatever you want and give justification for it. And I'm just very curious, like which units did you pick? Because the ones that I've put on the teaser banner for this episode were chosen completely at random. So it might be that you won't mention any of them. But yeah,
Maybe
without
we'll get
further
some
ado,
silver.
yeah. So let's hear your number seven. What is placed there?
Sure. Okay. So we made this list together with my team, the Mind
Hmm.
Goblins. And we sort of we just came up with a few ideas about what we might put in.
Awesome.
And yeah, so and then I've put them in an order. And so my 7th is the Callidus Assassin. I think that this little piece, even after she just took a nerf, right? Supposedly, right? So she took that. She can no longer vect as many stratagems because so you can't vect phantasm, things like this. But
Hmm.
rarely, she's also gotten a points decrease somehow they were aware of the fact that they've caused this nerf and they've reduced her points accordingly. But in fact, it's she has many talents, and at 80 points or 85 points, whatever it is now, she's an absolute steal just because of the ability to pick up at the end of your opponent's turn and be deep strike. And being a lone op, it's very hard to actually take her out in an efficient way. So you'll find Callidus assassins popping around the board all game long a lot of the time and just scoring secondary objectives very efficiently.
Okay. So you see her in multiple lists. You see, like all of the Imperium likes or seems to like to bring her. Today I was in one of the TTS leagues that I'm in. I was paired into Grey Knights that are bringing a Callidus assassin. It feels like Knights, Imperial Knights like to bring a Callidus assassin as well. So for a very popular unit like this that has seen point drops in the data slate, how do you counter a unit like this? Do you even try to counter a unit like this, or do you just, let her do her thing, ignore her, and go about playing the mission and doing other stuff?
Well, I'll tell you what I did yesterday in a practice game. I charged the Callidus assassin, made a 9-inch charge with my hammerhead, Tau hammerhead, and tank shot her to death. So that's my cheeky suggestion. Just make a 9-inch charge and then roll a bunch of 5-ups and you'll kill a Callidus assassin, no problem.
All right, okay, that's
But in a more serious note, I think that there is counterplay, right? People say she's a tiny model and she's really hard to screen against, but that's not true. Okay, you just make sure your 9-inch screens go all the way to the corner instead of being like it's a big unit. Like we're used to screening against Genestealer Cult, Paladin squads. These, and even demons, right? We can all come in 3 inches away now. So our people are building these screens into their list. You can definitely just make sure your 9-inch screens overlap that corner. The Callidus can't sneak back behind you, and then and that's the way to play around it.
all right. Okay. Do you feel that her value dropped significantly because of the change to the stratagems that she can potentially effect, or uh, will we still see her in every list of the Imperium?
I think that she has gone up in value because she has gotten cheaper. So you get more for your money now, I think.
All right, that's an interesting take. I'll try to put a slide on the screen so that we can uh, have those. Give me a sec. Like this, like this. Is it working? Yes, it's working. So
Yeah.
number 7, we have the Callidus Assassin. Awesome. Right. What would be your number 6 then?
Okay. Well, these bottom 2 I chose because they're both really strong mission playing tools. And so the Callidus Assassin brings mission playing to armies that maybe lack it, like units that you don't have spare units to go do all your secondaries. And this next one's the same, but while the Callidus can go for all of the Imperium, sadly this one is only for Tyranids, but I think that it's better at its job. So I have put it above the Callidus, and that is the Biovore.
Interesting. All right, explain.
Well, so the Biovore shoots out its little it's what's it called? This little spore mine.
The mine, yeah.
Yeah, I believe it's changed now. So it's perhaps now a stratagem. It used to be that you could have 2 Biovores shooting out 2 spore mines, but for whatever reason now, maybe it's a once per phase action or something. But I now believe that it's only 1 spore mine a turn. But a lot of the time, 1 spore mine is all you need. So it's doing a very similar thing to the Callidus Assassin, where it's putting a tiny piece. It's the smallest base size there is, and it just squeezes somewhere on the board and does an act. So it's shooting into your opponent's corner for that secondary. We have to be in the corners, within 9 of the corners. It can sneak that, so Tyranids can very easily get 6 or even 8 on that sometimes. It's great for behind enemy lines. It can deploy teleport homer, can do all these things. It does have limitations, however, because it is OC 0. So if you're ever against a Tyranid player who tries to use it to cleanse an objective in the mid board, be like, whoa, mate, I don't think you own that objective with just the spore mine. So you have to watch out that it is limited. But on top of that, it has rules as well, right? It could just be a piece that says this unit does nothing but achieves actions, and it would be basically as valuable as it is now. But instead, it has extra rules, like you're not allowed to. It can come arrive near you, and then your units aren't allowed to advance near it. And it's like
Hmm.
that. It's so good for just controlling an area of the board. This was like my eyes were open to this in my game. I played Nathan Roberts at the end of Goom at the last round. Yeah, I think it was the Biovores and my lack of understanding of them up to that point that really won that game for him. They just scored him so many points, and they were controlling my army in just such a non-committal way, right? Like if I want to move block you, I have to send a 70-point unit of flesh hounds out, and that unit is dead. Whereas the Biovore, and even with the Callidus, it's the same with the Callidus assassin, right? She goes out to do her objectives, and sure, she's hard to kill, but she's still at risk. The Biovore is never at risk. It's just shooting out a little spore mine that if you do come close to, it just does a mortal wound to you for its trouble,
Hmm.
and then it goes along its merry way.
Yeah, but in the past you used to bring a couple. You used to bring a couple of biovores. Now I guess people advise to bring just one. Do you think that we will see biovores dropping from Tyranid's list completely? Because I don't know, maybe more valuable units are there and are worth bringing, or is that like a staple now that is going to
Um,
be in absolutely every Tyranid list?
I'm not sure. I don't think it'll be in every Tyranid list, right? You could. It depends what you're going for. I bet there's some bully Tyranid lists that really don't want to play the mission like that. They want to just come threat overload you, and this is points spent maybe in not the right place for that kind of list. But for any slower list, I'm not 100% sure how efficient Tyranids are at scoring the secondaries without this tool, but I see it as a very strong tool. Certainly, I would
Hmm.
put it into lists that I write, just because people say, where's the balance between points you want to spend punching your opponent in the face and points you want to spend on playing the mission, and this certainly does a lot for its points, right? You're going to get a lot of mission play out of this one piece. So that frees up more for damage dealing, or yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. No discussion there. I play Tyranids from time to time. I have a Biovore in every of my lists. I tend to pick fixed secondaries fairly frequently, just because they are so reliable, just because you can do all this jank that you described with slowing the opponent, but also scoring behind enemy lines and doing actions, which I think Tyranid players were extremely afraid of, that it would get nerfed in the balanced data slate, but it didn't. And it didn't get nerfed very much in the codex either. So yeah, happy days for Tyranid players, and we'll see how they fare at major events. What's next on your list?
Next for number 5 are now we've gone from mission play here, and we're moving on to um, just really strong units, really just for winning the game in other ways. And this one is the Deathwing Knights that I'm sure everyone has heard about. So these guys are they're just Terminators for the Dark Angels, but obviously Dark Angels are, people don't play them as the Dark Angels subsept or whatever the chapter Dark Angels. They
Hmm.
just play them as the basic Space Marine because people like to win more than they like to be thematic. I think, which is I can't complain about that. So they run these knights, and they have 4 wounds apiece because they're storm shields, I think, and they have T5, 4 up in vuln, and -1 damage innately. And this is really strong because lots of stuff. I mean, minus damage has kind of slipped away a lot in the meta, and so 2 damage weapons have made a resurgence. So I mean, even from my experience of playing Thousand Suns, Magnus having -1 damage in a lot of cases just doubled its durability. If you're thinking about things like GSC with their bomb satchels that they throw, they get a
Hmm.
load of damage 2 shots. It's like they're going to have to actually commit twice as many just to take you out. And on top of this, there's just with 10 of them, it's a limit where basically nothing can guarantee the one tap on these things. And no spoilers, but I think one of the most powerful units in the game right now is probably a Crisis unit, fully buffed up, and it barely puts a dent on Deathwing Knights with the traditional one. Because strength 8, 2 damage, AP2. You pop armor contempt on those guys, then they get back to wounding on 3s versus these super powerful weapons, and then you'd be happy if you kill 3 a lot of the time. And there's 7 more, and how many do they really need to threaten you back? I think even 4 is a pretty reasonable melee threat. They've got 4 attacks each. I think they hit on 2s. And remember, they've got that access to the once per game feel no pain, 4+ feel no pain against mortal wounds, just in case you thought you were going to bypass their saves that way. Nope, we're going to tank that too. Yeah, they're a very strong unit, and they're a real anchor that I think Space Marines can build around these days.
So how do people actually play them? So what to expect when you face a Space Marine or Dark Angels army? Do they come in a Land Raider, or do they deep strike? Like what is the optimal tactic to use them?
I think that the best way is somewhere in between threat and actuality. Okay, so they want to slowly walk towards the middle of the board, but that doesn't mean run them forward and put them in the middle out in the open for nothing, right? You want to get them in definitely at the LGT, right? We've got those bunkers near the middle of the board now. If they can make the gap, if they roll the 5 on the advance and they can make that jump into that bunker from your ruin, then great, do that kind of thing. If not, then maybe have them hide behind that ruin now that it's obscuring, or pick your moment. Okay, so while it is durable, I think what I'm talking about here is the wrong way to play them, and that is to just lean into that durability and shove them forward. Because sure, no one unit can take out this unit, but an army can take out this unit, right? If you're looking at 3 units of Crisis or a Tau gun line, the whole Tau gun line, then the Deathwing Knights are going to fall. So the way you're going to see them normally, I think, if is played in a sort of way where they pick their corners, they creep up the board, hiding, and then they give you that one moment where they split your army, where everything comes out, all the Marines. You've got the aggressors over here, maybe in a Redeemer Land Raider or something, and you've got whatever melee threat they might have pushing the other side, and then at the same time, you've got to deal with this Deathwing unit that's just towed onto the middle. And is then from there, because of the access to advance and charge, has this really quite large threat circle coming out from it. And so you've got one shot to try and cripple the unit or control it in some way. And and often if your choice is to cripple it, then it's a dice game, right? And I mean, no one likes to go against people rolling 4-ups, but with the -1 damage, I mean, in my experience, they say that they just live.
Yeah, so this sort of segues into my next question about this particular unit. Do you actually try to, tackle it like head on, or do you try to play around it? Like if they go to the center of the table, do you actually try to storm that center of the table, storm that castle, and put a dent in them, or do you play the rest of it, for primary game? Do you try to maybe take hold of the other primary objectives and just leave that to them because probably they are not going anywhere? Or is there any other specific tactic or maybe unit that could be used against them? I can think of a couple, but I'll let you go first.
Sure, I think that I think control is definitely what you want here, right? You never want to rely on killing a tough unit like this. Some armies can do it, that's built into the list, and if you're in a position on the board where you have the damage free, you can apply all your damage to the unit, then go for it, because that's a win condition. If you can take out this unit, then you probably just roll over the rest of the Dark Angels army. But for most armies, it's going to be a case of slowly bleeding out resources in order to control the unit, whether that means move blocking, or one thing to do is to put out like a tasty treat for the Dark Angels, for the Deathwing Knights on one side of the board, right? So they're in the middle. If it's a 5 objective mission, you could put one of your valuable units over on the bottom objective and maybe, you know, get a trade there, but maybe it's a trade down. And then what you're doing is you're tempting the Deathwing Knights to come over here, and then
Mm-hmm.
sure, you lose that unit, but then what you've got is the Deathwing Knights over on one side of the board, and you can, if you're a fast army, you can pivot to the other side, and then you're like, great, I don't have to deal with that problem. Sure, I've lost something juicy, but I've got the rest of my army, and maybe that's enough to pull back primary.
So what I was thinking of, and again, some armies have access to tools like this, some don't. But I immediately jump in my thoughts to the conversation I had with Skark, so one of the Polish players from the WTC who was playing Guard, and so Imperial Guard, and I recall him mentioning that when he was playing Necrons who were running two Lich Guard blobs, which I see a potential analogy between the Lich Guard and the Deathwing Knights. He said that what 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 he did was use units that allow you to like have the movement or like slow down the unit that was the actual threat. So in one of his games, I can't remember which, maybe it was a Medusa or something, but he shot that into the Lichguard blob, and he said that the Lichguard were never able to actually reach an objective marker throughout the entire game, just because that he was able to so efficiently slow them down. So I think, Space Marines have their Thunderfire cannons that allow you to do this. Tyranids have their Barbagants that allow you to do this. So I think that might be one of the viable tactics to tackle units like this, those monsters that you don't really want to get into combat with, that you don't want to waste your shots on. Just make them walk throughout the entire game.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You've got like the Night Spinner with Eldar, or as we, that turns off your advance roll as well, or the friendly Biovore that we've mentioned, who where
Exactly.
you can't advance near him. Yeah.
Does Tau have any tools to tackle them in that way, or not so much?
Um, I don't know off the top of my head. I haven't come across it myself. I know demons do. They've got a very unreliable one in the shape of the exalted flamer of
Hmm.
Siege. He shoots something, and then you have to roll a 4 up, and then their movement is halved or -2 or something. But yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe Tau do. I don't know. I haven't dug deep enough in Tau yet. I just saw the
Fair
crisis
enough.
and was like, there we go.
All right. That's fair. But yeah, absolutely. I agree with the number five. A tough nut to crack. Whether you're, you know, I mean, every time you face a unit like this, I remember that I think Lesiu from Team Poland brought them to the WTC, and again, they were a tough nut to crack even for Manny and his Eldar. So yeah, totally agree. Uh, what's up there at number 4?
Okay, so I've got number 4 and number 3 kind of come as a duo, but we will touch on them separately, and I think that's because 4 kind of maybe wants to be higher, but 3 is really standing in its way. So for 4, we've got the Necron Warriors.
I'm somehow not surprised, but again, explain to our listeners. Maybe there is someone who does not follow the meta or follows, but still hasn't had the opportunity to play against Necrons.
Yeah,
Would you be able to explain why you place them so highly?
absolutely right. So what you've got here, it's Necron Warriors, but it's in fact quite a menagerie of metallic skeletons, because you've got the unit will always look the same. There's some varieties of it, but mainly it'll have a Necron Warrior, the 20 Necron Warriors. It'll have a buff piece to give them all a 5+ feel no pain, and then it'll also, which is a character, and then it'll also have these two. I can't remember what they're called. They're not flayed ones. Do you remember their name?
Uh, I'm not that good with Necrons. I know what you're talking
No.
about. Crypto Thralls.
Crypto Thralls. There we go. Yeah. So you've got these 2 Crypto Thralls, and so they're 2 wounds each, and they have a 4 up feel no pain. And the way it works is that if you have a Lord, you definitely used to have a Lord in the unit as well, because that would allow you to res in both command phases. But that I'm not sure if that is a stratagem that then suffered nerf with this. I'm not sure you can double down on the stratagem if it's a battle tactic stratagem. I'll have to look into that. But anyway, you can definitely at least res for once in when you're being attacked. So you've got these 20 Necron warriors with a 5 feel no pain. So it doesn't sound that bad, except that you've also got these 4 wounds with a 4 feel no pain that can sometimes just tank for days. And when they die, and after you've finished activating 1 unit to shoot this unit, they pop a stratagem that brings like D6 plus 3 back or something. And that includes the 2 Crypto Thralls that are the tankiest front shield, meat shield in front of the rest of the unit. So let's say you've killed 2 Crypto Thralls and like 5 Necron Warriors. They roll well. I don't know how many it is, but it seems like they get all of them back and then a couple more. That's what it feels like. It feels like the units, yeah.
So that's part of the story. I'm not sure if the data slate has changed anything about them, but again, I strongly recommend to any of our listeners to go, especially before attending any major events where you might face Necrons, go and listen to our masterclass that we published over the weekend with Gito, so another Polish national team a player. Who analyzed both Liam Hackett's list from the WTC and his own list and compared them. And he also explained all the crazy stuff that you can do with Necron Warriors, one of them being, and again, I'm not sure if that has changed, but I don't believe it has. If you bring a command barge with you, that actually has a messed up wording that allows you to resurrect Necron Warriors in any phase. Meaning, if you get tank shocked in someone's charge phase and some Necron warriors die, it allows you to bring them back. If you get shot in Overwatch in your movement phase as a Necron player, the command barge still allows you to bring them back. So there are like so many instances where you can bring them back that it seems that the unit is nigh unkillable. So yeah, absolutely something to gear up against. Do you think that we're going to see that happen at the LGT? That people have figured out the Necron warrior blobs and what they do, and do you think that people will come prepared?
Yes, I think people always come prepared, but I think that certainly closer to the top, you'll realize that the Necron warriors have a real weakness, and that is to being, they're a gatekeeper unit. So if you're against MSU, then they just can tank it all day, and they'll have the same number of Necron warriors after the dust clears. But if you can wipe them with 1 activation, then all of their defense totally crumbles, because like sure there's 20 wounds or whatever it is, 26 wounds or whatever, but most of them only have the 4-up save and the 5-up feel no pain. So if you have damage that can get rid of all of that, then the unit just collapses, and none of those, like the command barges you mentioned and all those strats and stuff that you've invested in, you've got your point there paid for, assuming that you'll get a chance to use them. All of those points are wasted because the warrior unit just falls over, and you can't res a dead unit unless it cryptos off for some reason.
Yeah, the problem with that is that you usually have 2 units of those, so you need to tackle both of them. And if one is geared up to be very defensive, like with the invulnerable save from Orican, I guess, and maybe a Pheno Pain or something, then the other one will probably have a veil that will allow the whole blob to actually travel around the table as you want and just drop whenever the pilot wants them to. So overall, it's a unit that gives the Necron player a huge advantage. And if they want to follow one of the archetypes, where they, for example, have this very strong shooty backline with destroyers and sorry, not command barges, but like the Doomsday Arcs and so on, then even if you engage the Necron warriors per se, sooner or later they will just wipe you with their shooting. So it's really difficult to come well prepared against the Necrons, I think.
I agree. I think also it pairs really. They synergize really well in the meta with the Deathwing Knights, okay? Because the Deathwing Knights are susceptible to attrition. you can just kill 2 or 3, 1 or 2, let's be honest, 1 or 2 a turn, and you'll get them down, so it's a much less effective unit. Whereas the Necrons are immune to attrition. So the big units that will one-tap the Necrons will do inefficient damage to the Deathwing Knights. And so it makes it quite hard list building for everyone else when they know they're going to be coming up against both of these threats.
Yeah. And one thing of note as well, like if you think that if you're running Deathwing Knights, and if you think that you charge the Necron warriors, and even if you don't kill them, at least you to steal the objective from them. They have what, 2 OC, so that's like 40 OC, and then if you bring a command barge and put it, in the vicinity, it gives them 1 more OC, which is like if you put all 20 on an objective, that's 60 OC. I don't think there's anything that can top that.
I mean, by my count, you only need 4 Necron warriors to out OC an entire unit of Deathwing Knights at that point.
Pretty much, yeah. In those circumstances, absolutely. So again, it speaks volumes, and then you can have way more than 4 on that objective. So not an easy one. Not an easy one. I'm already like afraid of what you put in 3, 2, and 1, or places 3, 2, and 1. So yeah, let's move on. What's in number 3?
Okay, so I've got my number 3. I mentioned before it links closely with number 4 because I believe this to be the absolute counter to the Necron warrior in the meta right now, and that is crisis suits from Tau.
Again, I'm somehow not surprised, but tell us all about them. Again, what can an unexpected player expect at a major event when he faces Tau? Tau, new kid on the block, I would say, in terms of before the balanced data slate. Only the bravest of teams, I guess, would bring it to the WTC. Not a very popular army pre-data slate, post-data slate with major points drops and so on. Suddenly, many people are talking about it, about that army. So, what makes the crisis suit your number 3?
Well, I mean, you only have to. It's a magical thing, this crisis unit, and you have to see it to believe it. Okay, so it used to be that crisis suits got steadily more expensive if you spammed the same gun. So if you took 3 of the cyclic ion blaster, which is the all-comer decent gun, then it would be probably like just shy of 100 points for each crisis. And now it's 60 points for a crisis, no matter what their weapon loadout is. So obviously, everyone takes the most efficient, which is, as mentioned, these cyclics. And so what this means is every single crisis model in the unit has 9 strength 8, AP 2, damage 2 shots. And that's, and there's 6 in the unit plus a commander. So we're looking at 54 shots from the base guys and then another 12 from the commander with slightly more efficient shooting. And that's already, that is already quite a powerful unit. But then the buffs just keep coming. So with Tau, you've got the marker light system. So you like pair up and your unit gets +1 to hit. So then they're hitting on 3s. And then if you mark light it with a Tetra, then they're going to be hitting on, then they're going to be re-rolling. So 3s re-rolling. Or alternatively, you can spot with a unit of stealth suits, and that gives them reroll 1s to wound instead, and then put Shadow Sun near them. So then you're hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s, and then when you come to the wound roll, you reroll 1s. That's also very efficient. Not quite as efficient, I think, and that's because of the final rule, which is you get double exploding 6s if it's round 2 onwards with the correct commander loadout. From about around 2 onwards, every 6 is 2 extra hits, and so at that point, you the best thing to do is just to reroll all your dice. You roll however many 6s you roll in the first 54. You reroll all of them, and math says you'll end up with, I think it's 72 hits from those 54, and that's
insane.
Yeah, and that's strength 8, AP 2, damage 2, and it ignores cover on top of that. And if it is battle round 3, then you can also pop a strat to be AP 3, +1 AP. But you have to be within 9 inches for that. So I mean, it comes up sometimes, but it's quite, be careful. There are limitations on that strat. But still, right? So if you have a look at our previous mention of the Necron warrior, what they don't want is to have to take 72 hits from a strength 8 weapon, which is then wounding them on 2s, and they get a 6-up save in response. So by maths, I think that kills, let's say the Crypto Thrall by some miracle tanks 20 wounds with his Feel No Pain, which can happen. It can happen. So he's like, oh, you're rolling really well there, buddy. Jeez, this might not get through. And then, right, 20 wounds later, he starts rolling the saves on his warriors, and nope, still gets through. Don't worry about it. All those Necron warriors, I think it kills 40, maybe 35.
Yeah, I think the Necron warriors can get like an invulnerable save from Orican the Diviner or something, so that makes it that much difficult to kill them. But at the same
Yeah,
time,
I think maybe at that point you would actually have to fire the commander. You'd have to probably
yeah,
roll those dice.
but again, according to Gitto, even if you have that, Crisis Suit is something that you simply don't want to face as Necrons. And even he admits that like, it's an uneven matchup if the Crises are left alone and allowed to shoot at the Necron warriors. Sooner or later, they will put a dent in the unit or like wipe it completely. So I agree, and I like Necron warriors right now. I think are regarded as the most resilient unit in the game. Is there anything that could withstand that barrage of fire, or is it just that sort of point and click game where the Tau player just points in something and you don't ask questions, you just remove it?
Yeah, there is something that can withstand that fire, and those are Deathwing Knights, which I think that entire unit will kill 2 or 3 Deathwing Knights.
That's crazy.
It's
Again,
disgusting, I know,
yeah,
because
it is.
they wound on 3s instead of 2s.
Yeah,
The
because of the
Deathwing Knight
-1.
pops Armor of Contempt, so he's saving on 3s, and he's got 4 wounds apiece, and it's from damage 2 down to damage 1. So yeah, I think you'd be lucky to get 12 wounds through there and kill 3 Deathwing Knights. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe you spike
mhm.
up, maybe you kill 6, right? Like if with a good roll and the Deathwing Knight fluffs his saves a bit, maybe you're killing 5 or 6. But honestly, I've shot it and I've killed 2. I've shot it and I've killed 1, and so it's like you don't want to do that as the Tau player.
Yep.
You'd
Sorry,
much rather be facing the Necron warriors, that's for sure.
yeah, I just needed to close the window because there was, I don't know if it's something flying or driving by, but it's like a noisy piece of crap. So coming back to the Crisis Suit, a disgusting unit. And they get the advantage that if the the Deathwing Knights are walking towards them, they get a couple of turns of shooting at them. So unless the SM player, the A player, does something to tackle them, which leads to my next question, then yeah, poor Deathwing Knights. Is there anything that can actually overwhelm the Crisis suits? Is there
Yeah.
anything, any sort of tactic that you could recommend to our listeners to actually sort of tackle them?
Well, if you do have every time the crisis suits overcharge, they do blow themselves up as well, which is really funny.
So you just need to
Um,
wait.
so you just but I mean, you wait and you hope you still have an army. You hope that the Tau player just says he's going to overcharge every time he shoots, and then like overwatches and overcharges everything. Yeah, that would be ideal. But in in a closer game, I think that they do have weaknesses. Uh, their main defense is strike and fade, so that's they get to the classic thing where they shoot and then they move away. But it's 2 CP, so it's quite pricey, and so that can be, they can't do that all the time. They can, I
Hmm.
mean, if they can do it technically every turn, but that would mean they're not doing anything else and not using any of the strats for anything else. And I think that's probably not what the Tau player wants. But if you do, I mean, if you give it to them, if you just feed them 1 unit at a time and let the crisis unit jump, shoot, jump, kill that 1 unit, then you're going to have a bad time. I think the ways around it are understanding that this unit is really quite squishy. It doesn't look like a glass cannon because there's a lot of wounds there,
Mm.
but it's only toughness 5. It's only got a 3-up save. Sure, it's got a 4-up invuln and the 6 wounds a model, but that's not in a world of Necron warriors and Deathwing Knights. They're really not that tanky. So if you get your shots into them, then you'll find that they crumple real fast. And so, like what's really good at killing crisis suits is an opposing unit of crisis suits, because that will one tap a crisis suit unit.
Mm. I'm still, I mean, I'm pitching this to different people, but so far no one has picked up on this top 7. But I think it would make for an interesting episode of the top 7 like misjudged units, looking through the lens of ninth edition, because Crisis in ninth edition were not only a shooty threat, but they were also quite resilient because of their drones and I think a 2-up save and so on and so on. I remember that to me they had always been a nightmare. Now, as you said, they are a little bit of a glass cannon. They definitely can be killed. Um, you just need to hide well, and that's it. Or bring
Exactly.
Deathwing Knights. Yeah, simple
There's
as.
also there's a weakness inherently built into Tau, and it comes from the power of these crisis suits, in that they give up bring it down just extremely easily. I mean,
Because
often
they are
when you're
vehicles now.
because
Mhm.
everything is a vehicle, so they can't go through walls. So remember that. So they're not as mobile as they might appear to be. They're much squishier, and they give up bring it down. So passively, you'll play against Tau and you'll get at least 6 to 8 points on bring it down from them blowing themselves up. And then at that point, you only have to kill another like six crisis units and 6 crisis models. Sorry, models
Mhm.
or a piranha or two. You know, one of those units of Tetras. That's 4 points. Like you're gonna max bring it down. You're gonna get your 20 points there, and that's the way. That's the weakness of Tau, is that there is a clock on the Tau player. They need to leverage this firepower that they've got, and they certainly have it, but they really need to leverage it into primary control and or even a tabling, right? And that's how Tau want to play the game right now. So if you can weather that storm, then chances are you will be up on secondaries.
That's really cool insight, and yep, I appreciate it. So before we get to number 2, just I'll do a couple of quick announcements, and those are, first of all, thank you to anyone who is watching us live right now, and thank you to anyone who is listening to this after the recording is done. So either via any podcasting media like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but also thank you for rewatching this on YouTube. We do this for you, and yeah, we would appreciate a subscribe, a like, and so on. On Thursday, we are recording. I think, sorry, tomorrow. I don't know if that's going to be live or if that's going to be recorded, but I know that Joker is recording an episode with Kyle Grundy. So if we announce it as live, yeah, I'll make a teaser for that. So make sure that you tune in to listen to what Kyle has to say, probably also about Tau. Um, but if it's recorded, then it's going to appear on our channel. So again, press that subscribe, press that bell button to get the latest notification as soon as the episode drops, for your viewing pleasure, so that you stay notified about everything that we do. And also, do consider becoming a patron, because with that you get early access to our masterclasses, like the ones that we've published last weekend. So 2 of them dropped at the same time, one with Gito and his Necrons, and the second one with Pumbaa and his Thousand Sons. And even though both of them were recorded like right after the WTC, so pre-data slate, there is still a ton of merit in those recordings. I think the Gito one lasts like 2.5 hours or something like this, but it's a joy to listen to because there is so much insight. It's just unbelievable how much information you can pack in that time. So yeah, so if you want to get early access to that or some awesome gadgets or just become part of our Discord community, please consider becoming a patron. Um, on Thursday, we are recording another live episode with Mani Chima and Ed Watts, so 2 people from Team Glasshammer. So again, book some time. Make sure you join us. Make sure you have your notifications on, because it will be a hell of an episode as well. And now we're going back to Will. Will, what is your number 2?
Um, yeah, I just want to say that definitely. Whenever Kyle Grundy talks about Tau, I definitely listen. So you should definitely check out that podcast. That's gonna be great. I'm gonna be listening.
Cool.
Okay.
So we have some interesting guesses from our listeners in the chat. Like 2 Night Spinner, 1 Incarn. Let's see. What is your number 2?
Well, yeah. No spoilers, but my number 2 is neither of those. My number 2 is really it's a placeholder for a type of unit, and this is, I think, just one of the most impactful ones right now. One of it really enables its faction, and that is the Ork Trukk.
Wow. Okay. I definitely didn't expect that. Explain.
Okay, so my reasoning here is that really the Ork Trukk is it's basically talking about transports in general, and them being just such a powerful tool in the current climate, especially when you're considering these crisis suits or these Deathwing knights and these these powerful units that only get the one hit. Okay, so if you've got a juicy unit hiding inside a transport, then all these powerful guns can do is open up that transport, and then your juicy unit is still alive. So this is, yeah, and I just don't think a faction like Orcs lives and breathes off of the power of its of their trucks, because once they're out, they're just sitting ducks. They don't have any of the fifth durability, and honestly, they don't have the output of these other armies other than by sheer numbers of bodies alone. But even then, like crisis suits love loads of bodies because of their 54 shots, 72 hits.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a faction reliant on one data sheet really, and I would say that is the truck, and it's true of many factions. Let's say Khorne Berserkers with their rhinos, or I mean, I don't know how are Votann doing these days. They still go in their land fortresses.
I
But
think with a land fortress costing 220 points or 230 points, I think they're gonna bring 3.
they're going to be in, yeah, exactly. Or like the Land Rainer Redeemer, I've been seeing that one about, right? That's a very strong transport these days, and primarily it's because of the aggressors that are hiding inside, rather than those pretty obnoxious Overwatch flamers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that transports. I mean, people like the people talk about activation lock, right? That's what we're talking about here, and I think it's a very powerful tool, and one that everyone should be prepared to use in their arsenal. Like you park your transport by a wall. It's just very hard to attack any transport by any wall for any army. You're just like, oh, I have to put units on both sides. Honestly, it's like playing against Eldar. You have to like think of all the places where they can phantasm, and oh yeah.
I
So
mean,
if you
yeah,
want,
it's sorry, go on.
no, sorry, no, it's fine.
So I wanted to say it is not just that transports usually allow those slower armies, like I don't know, take Death Guard for example, so one of my favorites, that actually allows them to move around the table, which is with their typical 4 to 5 inches of movement. That's something that they are definitely yearning for. Uh, so that you said of what was the expression again? Activation lock, right? I think that's something that Innes Wilson popularized not so long ago with Death Guard, because he took them to a tournament. He took a Land Raider. He took like a bunch of characters that just sat in the Land Raider at the right moment. They just jumped out, and the opponent had to figure out like in what order to shoot, what to kill first. And usually there wasn't enough shooting because those characters were quite resilient. So that is absolutely amazing. And then we could see how successful lists full of transports can be at the WTC. I think the American Orc list that had 6 trucks or something like that filled to the brim with boys and other units. Again, even if you killed the truck, there is still a bunch of bodies inside, some idiots to stand on objectives and so on, and you just don't, with such huge target saturation, you just don't know what to point your finger at first. So yeah, absolutely. I understand why you're leaning towards like the whole unit archetype and not just the truck itself, but the truck probably the one that comes to mind first.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to I was also going to use the Death Guard Rhino one, because that does actually look very interesting right now. But I think that even with those points drops, I think Orcs are still, the stronger faction. So I wanted it to be the Ork Trukk that was up here at number 2.
Yeah, the Death Guard Rhino also a valid point, especially if you like put, I don't know, 2 foul blight spawns inside or something else with a flamer. Then out of nowhere, this becomes like a deadly wagon that just rides around the table and then flames everything to death and is good with Overwatch, and actually now also has contagions in 10th edition, because that wasn't the case in 9th edition. So it has so many
Yeah,
applications. It's just beyond comprehension.
it's a budget with Land Raider Redeemer at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Very much so. Okay, now for the big number one, what would that be?
Okay, yeah. So I do have a number one. Before I start, I did pick one other side one, which is the unit that has the most impact in any game that I arrive at the table and see that my opponent has this unit. Then it's like it has a very big impact on me. at the tabletop for sure. And so I'm just going to touch on that one first. So that's
Uh-huh.
this is the bonus one before we get to number one, and
Special mention.
special mention to the Incarn, because it is the biggest headache to play against of any unit in the game.
I know what you mean, especially in 10th edition, because the rules are, well, the rules help it a lot, being able to charge after
Yeah, there's no
appearing on the
counterplay
table.
now.
Yeah,
It
pretty much.
honestly though, like I think it may have got easier to play against now, because back when there was counterplay, that just meant you had to counterplay, and it was always extremely tricky to wall off every unit you were trying to kill so that the Incarn couldn't arrive. So now at least you're just like, oh, they've killed one of my small chaff units near my home objective, and my favorite character is standing there in the backfield holding that objective. Oh, well, now there's an Incarn there and he's dead. Oh well.
That's exactly how it happens. I mean, and yeah, as you said, there is hardly any counterplay apart from maybe trying to screen, but you cannot really screen very efficiently against that as well. So because
Yeah,
it needs to appear as close to the dead model as possible, right? I think that's the ruling.
that's right. Yeah, so there is counterplay. It's not the traditional screening where your unit kind of blocks out an area. What you have to do is you have to like bubble wrap your precious stuff. So let's you have, for the Thousand Suns example, I had a unit of Sangors. I'd have all my characters. They'd all stand inside, like surrounded by this unit of Sangors, so that if the Incarn arrived nearby, then it couldn't charge the characters. It could
Hmm.
only charge this trash unit, right? So this is replicatable in loads of different lists. And so, and the much easier way is have something that's like a deep strike deny bubble, like infiltrators can't arrive within 12.
Mm.
That works on the Incarn. Sorry, mate, can't jump here.
Yeah, actually, infiltrators is something that I haven't thought about, but yeah, that's a valid point. So as long as you have them in the right spot, then absolutely.
Yeah, because
Unfortunately,
because
yeah, yeah.
you could accidentally give the Incarn exactly the movement it wants, right? Because it's
Hmm.
still allowed to be placed. It's just placed as close as possible, so it gets pushed outside that 12 bubble, and it's like, oh, thanks. I can in fact now go directly on your objective. That's the closest point. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, and it's especially taxing to play against it because Eldar usually bring a plethora of like indirect weapons that can reach pretty much anywhere they want, anytime they want. And then as soon as they do their job and kill something, that you know motherfucker appears on the table, and there's very little you can do. So even with infiltrators, you need to place them properly in order to avoid that. So I mean, it is counterplay, but it will be situational, I guess.
Absolutely. And I mean, and the Incarn strength isn't in attacking you, it's in winning primary, right? Like
Hmm.
every time you kill any of the opposing Eldar's models, units, sorry, you have to remember that, do I have enough guns left pointing at that objective to kill the Incarn when it arrives? And very often the answer is no, right? If you've just killed a tank, killed a fire prism or something, or a wraith knight, God forbid, then
Hmm.
an Incarn arrives, it's like, oh, I'm out of guns. That they've still got their 15 on primary. That's it.
I love the comment from Simon. Fuck the incarn, just
Yeah,
just straight up, no
very simple.
discussions.
Yeah, no, I agree.
+3 to migraine. Yeah, very spot on. Okay. Any other special mentions or any other unit that you want to bring up before we jump to number one?
Um, I mean, I really wanted to mention Be'lakor because he's the most impactful unit to my army, because I think that he's single-handedly making demons playable right now. But we don't need to really get into the details too much. He's just basically gives lone op to a lot of the demon army, and without it, they'd just not be an army there at all. So he gets my special mention because he's in every single demon list. And I think that at LGT, I'm gonna make a bet, even though lists aren't even in yet, so people could easily build to spite this. I'm gonna place a bet that every single demon list that's competing has Be'lakor in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you can actually play demons effectively without him. Uh, he's just a powerhouse that buffs the entire army. You want to stay close to him. Uh, yeah, no discussion about it. So I think every demons list should contain the model. Plus, the model is absolutely gorgeous, one of the best
Yeah.
looking models in the game. So just for that sheer cool factor, it deserves to a special mention.
The model is stunning, and you know, even just at first sight, you're like, this is amazing. And then you try and hide it in one of Zach's L's, and you're like, oh my god, I hate this model. Why are its wings so wide?
You don't have to tell that to me, a Mortarian player that not only needs to, pivot all the time and spare movement to do that, or sorry, no, spend
Yeah, I know.
movement to do that. But I know your pain, buddy.
I think for Mortarion though, I used to play with Mortarion, and his wings go over the L, so he can tuck right in. Belloc was like, you have to like snap parts off of him just to get him crammed in those L's sometimes.
And that's never good. But I've seen I can't remember. I think last year or 2 years ago. I've seen some pictures from one of Zach's events. Someone brought a Bellacore that was actually playing a violin
That
or
was
something
me.
like this. That was you. Oh my god. Oh my god. But I want more pictures of that Bellacore because I think it's somewhere on our Instagram because I just love the model so much.
He'll be
So
there. He'll be at LGT if I don't run
hats
top.
off to you, man. Like, that's like the best sort of conversion that I've seen. So yeah, absolutely adorable. Um, and it will be great to see it live this year. Yeah, to anyone who wants to see that amazing model, just head onto the LGT, and you might get the opportunity to actually spot it on the table. Any other special mentions, or are we doing the number one?
No, let's go for it. We're doing the
All
number
right,
one.
go ahead then.
And I've picked this one partly for a lot of the reasons we've mentioned before, in the fact that it's just such a great control piece for these other units, like the Necron Warriors, the Crisis Suits, the Deathwing Knights. All of them see this across the table and just groan, and that is the Eldar Night Spinner.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go on. Explain again to someone who might not have had an opportunity to face Eldar on the table, and there are still people like that, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
I envy those people. I hope you never have to face them.
where is the power coming from then?
Okay, so the power is not from the damage, but it does have damage. Okay, 2 Night Spinners could kill 5 Marines, right? If they spike up, you can slowly over the course of a game whittle away people's trash units with their shooting. But the real strength comes from the fact that once you score a hit by a Night Spinner, the unit hit cannot advance and gets -2 to its movement. So for let's say you're looking at Deathwing Knights, okay, these guys have got a 5-inch move, and if it's turn 1 and they're on the board, then they can't advance. They have to waddle 3 inches forward, and at that point, they're not going to be in the next ruin. They're going to be in the open. You're going to be able to whittle them down, or you're just going to be able to ignore them for a large portion of the game. Necron Warriors, same story, right? 5-inch move down to 3, nothing they can do. Or they can teleport, can't they? But
Mm,
yeah, Crisis Suits, they really hate this. Okay, so the strength of the Crisis the comes from the what's it called, the Cold Star Commander that joins them, and
mhm.
that gives the Crisis Suits a 12-inch move and assault weapons, so they can advance and shoot. Now the Crisis Suit unit, every time it advances, adds 6. It's just an auto advances 6, so suddenly they move 18 inches. Well, not anymore. They're down to 10-inch move, and it's very easy to play around 10-inch move versus 18-inch move, especially for an Eldar army with Phantasm. It's just it's if anything, it's the icing on the cake for what is, the Eldar menagerie of just crap, right? So like, you've got the Incarn there. Obviously, no, even without him though, the army is so annoying. You've got the Phantasms, you've got the Fire and Fades, you've got all the slipperiness of any other army in the game. And then on top of that, you've got this indirect firing tank that can shoot any unit on the board that it wants at will and be like, you are not moving this turn, or not moving as far as you'd want at least. And it's crippling. It just cripples armies. And that's before you look at any Eldar damage. So at this point, Eldar could be in this place where they just have they're very low damage. It could be, right, and they have nothing going for them other than mission play, and they would still be an A-tier army just because of data sheets like this and their rule set. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as a Death Guard player, having my movement halved just makes me stay in one spot and not go anywhere.
I know
It's
once upon a time you ignored that, I think, but not anymore.
yeah, there was a nice time in the past when we had a rule that allowed us to actually ignore terrain, ignore any movement affecting abilities, but that's way in the past now. So yeah, units like Night Spinners are an absolute nightmare. Uh, does that only affect infantry, or does it actually affect everything?
I don't know. I thought it affected everything, but maybe it only affects infantry.
Let's look up the Night Spinner data sheet.
Let's check it out. Yeah. Because
Uh,
I mean, no, I'm pretty. It definitely impacts crisis suits, which are vehicles and fly. So,
I
I
already
mean,
don't like where this is going, but
yeah, that feels like everything to me. Maybe it doesn't work on Titanic units.
funnily enough, if you Google that, it doesn't pop up as an immediate answer. Anyone in the chat, if you know whether that affects only infantry or more stuff as well. So we already know that probably vehicles as well. So there's not much left that it could not affect. I'm not sure. I don't know. Um, but yeah, as you said, absolutely crippling. Any counterplay? Any ideas like how to deal with
I'm
things
just
like
looking at
this?
it. Hit against an enemy unit. That enemy unit is pinned, so it is any enemy
Any?
unit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Counterplay. Well, it's a unit that fires indirect, so you can't hide from it. Has a 48-inch range, which is the
The next
entire
table.
board. Yeah, and it hits on threes or whatever with the free reroll, so you're not even gonna get a lucky and it not even hit you. So
Mm.
counterplay. I guess have more threats than they have Night Spinners, right? If you have 3 units of Deathwing Knights, they can't slow them all down. But no,
It's
I
true.
mean, there's other solutions, right? So the Necrons have the teleport that gets around it. Deathwing Knights can obviously be put in reserve. That means they can deep strike. That you won't get webbed until the turn you come in at least. And the same for Crisis. You can do the same thing. So any of these basically adapt to, once you see the Night Spinner across the table, adapt for the idea that this slow trudge towards the middle is not going to work. You have to make your units more dynamic via deep strike and things like that. But on the flip side of that, I think an Eldar army, an MSU Eldar army, is just going to grin if someone puts all their Crises unit into deep strike or all of their Deathwing Knights into deep strike. They're just going to be like, right, well, turn 2 and 3, I'm just going to screen the entire board. I'm going to push you back into your deployment zone, and we're going to have the same. You're going to have the same problem just from turn 3 onwards. So, I mean, Eldar don't like fighting with their entire army against your entire army. They don't like that. So if you can bring that about through the Night Spinners, so let's say turn 1 you go first and your Deathwing Knights, you could re-roll your advance roll to try and get those 4, 5, 6 and really push out towards the middle as fast as you can. Then you've made it. You made it halfway before it gets to shoot. So yeah, that's one piece of advice I have: is go first. Sometimes that helps. Yeah, or threat overload. Absolutely.
Yeah, target saturation.
Yeah, and if your crisis suits slowed, or if your corn, your 1 unit of your 8 bound is slowed or whatever, it's like fine. Well, I don't know. It's hard, isn't it? Because you don't. What it's almost what it's encouraging you to do is go in dribs and drabs with the bit that can make it. But that's probably exactly what Eldar want. So
Yeah, I can only think really, but again, it doesn't help the majority of the armies because I don't think there are many armies that allow you to deep strike closer than 9 inches. I can think of Gene Stealer cults. I can think of Tyranid Trigon that you could potentially try and rapid ingress a unit like that, and then if the Eldar player actually allows you to do that, uh, and a thinking Eldar player probably would never allow that to happen. Uh, other than that, just count on lucky nines if you deep strike with something. I guess.
yeah, exactly.
Seriously, like the best way to counter play is to hide with reserves
But
and so on, and then count on those lucky nines.
I guess the thing is, it's not a permanent solution to the problem, the Night Spinner, right? If let's say your Deathwing Knights or your Necron Warriors, okay, sure you're slowed, but you're still there. So it's going to take you twice as long, but by turn 3, you'll have made it to the middle. And now Eldar, a lot of Eldar armies don't really have the damage to punch right through a unit of Deathwing Knights in one go. So, you can lean into your own strengths instead of, being all doom and gloom about it, and just make them roll the dice, right? Like it's never set in stone. So just keep playing your mission as best you can. Like try and execute your game plan, even though some of your guys are slower and they've got Eldar's guys like stabbing you in the ankle every now and again, and then disappearing behind a wall so you can't interact with them. Just having a good old time, and then the Incarn arrives and kills your guy on your backfield, and you're like, oh well. Just keep trudging forward. That's what I say.
Yeah. Do you think that because again, it makes sense to advise people to play to the mission and just hope that the Elder army doesn't cripple you fast enough so that you can actually bring some points. But is there any play in trying to deny Eldar points and missions, or is it too hard to do right now?
No, yeah, you can deny them primary, right? They don't like they'll often want to preserve resources. Well, I mean, yeah. So if the power of Phantasm is to avoid a threat, right? So if you come point guns at every point of an objective, then that unit will have to Phantasm off the point in order to live. That infantry unit, and so that's a good way to fight for primary, because they do run out of stuff quite quick, and if the wheels fall off the bus with Eldar, then yeah, then it's going to crash or whatever. So so if you can get those infantry, those scoring units out of position, or make them make a choice between trying to hold primary or and you can definitely deny them secondaries as well, right? Especially if you're an army like Necrons or like Tau. Well, maybe not Tau because of Bring It Down, but definitely Necrons and Deathwing, or like Marines and stuff, because there's a lot of them are kill secondaries, and if all you've got is a unit of Deathwing Knights out in front, then it's not gonna give up it's gonna give up at most 2 or 3 for overwhelming force or whatever, and your list probably, you can avoid giving up Bring It Down, you can avoid giving up Assassinate. You just need those couple of good turns to swing against you, and while you can also and if you're also picking up the kills in response, maybe by forking some of their infantry units, so basically that just, it means get line of sight on 2 units at once, so then even if they Phantasm 1, you've still got an option to shoot, sorry.
So is that your game plan for your Demons army as well?
Well, demons have their own tricks, right? So Be'lakor can't be shot outside of 18. No one in the army can be shot outside of 18. I can teleport within 3. So
there are tools.
Yeah, demons have pretty good tools, I think, into Eldar. But yeah, the essentially the demon army is about being able to leverage the fact that your people struggle to interact with you into somehow winning the fight, right? So you'll almost always get the first hit, but if we're talking about Eldar specifically, then that kind of falls apart again, because melee is very, very ineffective against these movement abilities like Phantasm. Like you have to be threatening multiple units in the same way, but when you threaten a unit with a melee unit, often that unit is now been thrown away, right? Like melee units have to trade in order to get value, and so if you're going for a charge on some small night specters or whatever they're called, shadow specters, and they Phantasm away, then your unit is still going to die. It doesn't matter if over on the other side of the board you managed to get that charge off, because they could only Phantasm in one place. You still then traded 2 for 1, and nights and shadow specters were already very cheap. So but I think that, like I said, it's you want to hit them with everything at once for Eldar. Like, so if you are in a position where you can just threat overload them, then I think that's the best approach, because they can't, their tricks don't get them out of everything.
Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic piece of advice, and one that we will leave our listeners with for the night. Will, is there? So first of all, thank you for doing this. Thank you for preparing that list for us. I think it was really entertaining, really insightful, really deep. Is there anything you would like to plug, or is there any place where people can find you? Maybe find any information about the Mind Goblins. Tell us all about it.
Sure, I think there's. I'm not sure we Mind Goblins have a social media page. Maybe they do, but I don't think. Yeah, I haven't been involved with that. But maybe just Google Mind Goblins. I'm sure we'll show up, or just find us at the events. We've all got very fetching purple T-shirts now, so yeah, just come say hi. And I myself have actually, I did start a YouTube channel last year, but it's getting a bit dusty now. But if you want to check out some competitive breakdowns of some games from Adepticon or LVO last year, then you can see that at Top Tables 40K.
Well, mate, definitely you have the voice, you have the knowledge for all the insights. Maybe it's time to revive that channel because it sounds like a gold mine, to be perfectly honest.
Well, we'll see. Maybe yeah, maybe after Christmas.
Fingers crossed. Anyway, thank you for coming and joining us on this episode. Thank you to everyone who has listened to this live, and thank you to everyone who is listening to it either on YouTube or the podcasting media of all sorts. We will be back maybe tomorrow if it's not recorded, if it's live. If it's recorded, then probably we will post the episode on what day is it today? Monday. Then we will post it on Wednesday, and then as I mentioned earlier, we will be recording another episode, another LGT's Lucky 7 on Thursday with people from Team Glasshammer. So again, make sure that you have some time put aside to watch that. And yeah, check the description of the episode for our Patreon page, for the links to our social media and so on. And yeah, watch this space for more episodes because this week and next week we will be posting a huge amount of episodes for your viewing pleasure. Uh, I just figured out that there is. I thanked everyone and so on, but there were some questions in the chat. Will, do you have time for one or two questions from the listeners?
Absolutely, that's fine.
All right. So very quickly, we have a question from Adam Skinner. I'd be curious on Will's thoughts on the anti-demon choice that is Grey Knights.
I think Grey Knights are. I think maybe demons are anti-Grey Knights at the minute. I feel like there's this idea of a rivalry between Grey Knights and demons, but in my head, I'm not sure the demons know who the Grey Knights are. I feel like the Grey Knights really claim like they've got this great nemesis, and the demons are just like, who?
Whatever.
But yeah, in the actual on the tabletop, I think it's an interesting game right now, right? Because you both have this basically mirrored abilities to teleport around the board, deep strike within 3. But what the Grey Knights have is this innate durability, and they're even slipperier than demons. But they do fall apart when you can catch them. So so if you do manage to pin a unit down or actually manage to attack it, then I think you end up ahead in that fight in general. Like, it depends what monsters you're bringing, right? Because right now the big monsters are a bit inefficient, and the Lord of Change, he doesn't really do much against the Grey Knights because of their AP buffs and stuff. But if you're looking at high damage, small infantry units, it doesn't work, does it? Because they just teleport away every time you attack them. Honestly, I think that in that matchup, you're both kind of focusing on the mission. You're kind of anti-armies in the same way. So if you screen out your good bits, your juicy bits, with outside of Bellacor's 18, right, and then give them your kind of trashier units a little bit if they want to attack you, then attack them in 2 places. That's the way to do it, isn't it? Because they can only do the strat at one, because it's a stratagem to teleport away. So if they want to attack you, then you just, like the Eldar, you fork their paladin blocks. And if you manage to get one of those 4 blocks down, then the army really, it really grinds to a halt. Yeah.
Okay, valid point. And then not really a question, because that's there was a comment from Simon Harris, who mentioned Admech and mentioned that Cataphrons with their 5-inch move, and then being shot by a Night Spinner, that brings that unit to a halt. But I just wanted to ask, out of sheer curiosity, is anyone on Team Mind Goblins actually considering Admech as an army, or have they not received enough buffs yet?
Yes, we do have an AdMech player. He's actually the newest Mind Goblin. I think we snaffled him up after people noticed how well he was doing with AdMech. I think he beat a couple of the Mind Goblins, and so they were like, yeah, we'll slide into his DMs, as is the Mind Goblin way. So yeah, so we snaffled him up. I think his name is Johnny. We haven't actually spoken, me and him. I think I hope it's Johnny at this point.
Yeah.
But
All
yeah,
right.
like I say, we've said me and him have arranged we're definitely going to have a game before LGT because I need to practice into AdMech. Because what you don't want to do is be blindsided by these armies that have received sly buffs and then are actually much stronger than you maybe anticipated. So as far as I am aware, the AdMech trick is that it overwatches you and kills everything. So you have to be very, and if you're not aware of that going in, right, then you can lose a very valuable resource to Overwatch, and that's game losing, right?
Yeah, that's the last thing that you want. So yeah, I'm actually happy for all the armies considered the underdogs. I'm really hoping for some huge upsets at both the invitational and the main event of the LGT. I would like to see AdMech players actually do well, Death Guard players do well. What other army, whatever other army is there, that was considered up to the data slate an underdog. I would like to see those armies succeed because those make for the best stories. So yeah, I think I'll leave everyone with that thought, that fingers crossed that LGT turns out to be an entertaining event with a lot of unexpected turns of events, and we will be there to report on that for you. So with that in mind, Will, one more time, thank you. And to all our listeners, both live and not live, thanks a lot for being with us. And until next time, bye everyone.
Cheers.